Part 2 about how I caught my boyfriend and my best friend sleeping together. So like I said, I kind of felt bad for this prank, so I went over to her house the next day and I knock on the door and she doesn't answer. So I go around to the back door of her house and nobody was answering, so I looked through the window because the cars were there. And that's whenever I see her and my boyfriend doing it. Yep. So obviously I was pissed off and I happened to have my boyfriend's house key, so I went to the Dollar Tree and bought like 50 different nail polishes. And as you could probably guess, I went to his house and put nail polish all over his shit, his clothes, his shoes, everything, even his walls. When I left, I asked John if we could meet and talk, and Wednesday we decided to confront them. And Louise and Vivian said that they had been dating, secretly, behind our backs, way before me and Louise even started dating. There really is no moral to this story, to be honest. It's just that girls need to start following girl code more and not being
Story time about how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimer, is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I'm extremely spoiled. My family is extremely rich. This allows me to buy whatever I want. The problem is my dad caught me sneaking out of my window, so he grounded me for 2 months and took away my allowance. And my allowance is a lot. My dad usually gave me $150 a week. With that money, I would go to Starbucks every single day before school, and I would also treat my friends to Starbucks every now and then. More like every day. My friends and I would go to restaurants and have fancy dinners and lunches, and I also had a car. I would also go shopping almost every single Friday with my friends. I would get manicures and pedicures, and I could basically buy myself whatever I wanted just by asking my dad for the money. But now that I was grounded, that was not going to happen. By the way, I'm 20 now, but this was 3 years ago, so I was 17 when all of this happened. I can confidently say that I was like the queen bee in my high school. Number 1, I was in the cheerleading squad. Number 2, I was super pretty popular and had lots of money. Therefore, everyone wanted to hang out with me. I knew that I needed to maintain my status and also the life that I had become accustomed to. Not being able to go to Starbucks every single morning really made me depressed. That probably made you roll your eyes, but I said what I said. Now, there was no way I was gonna go get a job somewhere. You would never catch me working at a cafe or a restaurant or something like that. So I knew I had to start making my own money online somehow. I did some research and found out that people would sell pictures and video of their feet. So I signed up for this stupid website and decided to do it. The problem was that by the end of the week, I had only made $46. This was clearly not enough. So I did some more research and found out that you could actually sell your undies. So I took my last $200, went to Victoria's Secret and stocked up on undies. And this is when things get really fun. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. So I took my last $200, went to Victoria's Secret and stocked up on undies. I signed up to this website and within a week I had about 80 orders. So that means in 1 week I sold $2,000 worth of my own underwear. This is when I realized that I could charge way more than I had been. So I doubled the price and the following week I made $4,000. So here's the first mistake I made. I decided to tell my girlfriends about it and they decided to sign up and start selling their own undies. After a month, all of my friends and I were selling our undies, and we were all making bank. This also meant that we were spending lots of money. I started buying designer handbags and shoes. One of my friends even put a down payment to a car, and her parents started asking her tons of questions. And so did mine. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my parents caught me selling my undies online. Disclaimers are not my story time. Send me on Instagram. When my parents realized that I was buying all these designer bags and shoes, they started asking me questions. I was strong and I kept my mouth shut. Now my friends, on the other hand, who were also selling their undies, one of them got questioned by her parents and she gave up all the information. She even told her parents that I was the mastermind behind everything and that I had told all the other girls to start selling their undies, which was true. So it was official, I had been caught. Of course, my mom's friend runs straight over to my house and she starts spilling all the beans to my parents. My dad and mom came straight to my room and started rummaging through everything. That's when they find all my purses, my shoes, had stacks of cash in my drawers, and under my mattress. All of my friends got grounded, but my parents decided to take it a step further. They were so disgusted with me that they actually kicked me out of the house. But the good news is I had a lot of money, so I got myself a really nice apartment. So jokes on my parents. With all the money that I made, I decided to start a side hustle. I have my own employees and run my business from my house. My parents and I still talk, and my dad's even invested into my new company. When I look back at what I did, I do feel shame, but at the same time, I've become so successful from that money. What should I invest in next?
Story time about how my baby daddy ruined my pregnancy. So a little background information, I was 18 years old and I had just graduated high school. After my ex and I broke up, that's when I met my baby daddy, who we are going to call Mark. He had graduated high school the year before my freshman year in high school. So there was quite a bit of an age gap. I always had a little bit of a crush on him, but I never thought anything of it because he was literally a senior in high school while I was in middle school. So one day him and I hang out and I decided that I was not going to do the nasty with him because I did not want to get ghosted right away after. Been there, done that. But sadly, this is easier said than done. 2 weeks later, him and I are still doing the nasty and talking when all of a sudden he says, I think we should slow things down.
Wait, who?
Like, oh, okay, now you think we should slow things down. Pretty sure that seems a little ass backwards, but okay. Sure, bud. A week later, my stepmom and I are talking, and I low-key let it slip that my period was late.
Oh, hell no.
And not just like a day or two late, 5 days late.
Go home and get the gun.
So, you know, we stop at the nearest convenience store and we pick up a pregnancy test. I take the test, and then she gave me a hug, reassuring me that everything was gonna be okay. All I could do was cry because, as I said earlier, I'm only 18 years old. I just graduated high school. I felt like all of those plans that I had for myself in the future were just ripped out of my hands, crumpled up, thrown in the trash, and lit on fire. So my parents end up taking me to Mark's house. I show him the pregnancy test, and all of a sudden he starts freaking out. So then he tells me it's up to me whether I want to keep it or not. Like, yeah, I know. And we start to Google where I can go to get an abortion, because guess what? Just guess. Where do I live? Texas. And what was my luck? Texas had just overturned Roe v. Wade the week before. And it would be expensive to travel somewhere. So obviously we decided not to do that either. Well, fast forward to November, my birthday month,
Girl, shut the fuck up.
Anyway, so like I said, fast forward to November. The one day I'm at work, and earlier Mark had told me that he was going to go to his brother's house. And since I was at work, I didn't care until, dun dun dun, one of my friends, my work friends, convinced me to check and see if he was where he said he was. I swear, it's always the work friends that have like the best intuition. Like if they tell you your man is cheating, he's probably cheating. And I'm not gonna lie, you know, something was a little bit sus about the fact that he was going to hang out with his nephew super late. Yeah, shit just like low-key wasn't adding up. I drive past his brother's house, and what do you know? He isn't there.
Don't be shocked. You're shocked? You're shocked?
So now I am blowing this motherfucker's phone up. After what feels like forever, he finally answers the damn phone. And I'm like, hey, I know you're not at your brother's house. Where the fuck are you? And he confesses to being at this girl Hannah's house. He is swearing up and down that nothing happened with this girl Hannah.
You lying? Yeah.
I believe him. I let it go because he tells me that he loves me and he wants to make things work.
Dumbass bitch.
So 4 days later, while he's at work, I realized that this tool bag left his Apple Watch at home, and that hoe had "go through me bitch" written all over it. So what did I do? I went through that shit, and I found some very raunchy text messages between him and Hannah. They had been talking about how much they wanted each other, and he had gotten mad at her for not wanting to do the nasty with him. On the screen are the receipts. I go psycho. After I confront him, he begs me not to leave him. And you know, he swears he'll never do it again. He lied.
Got him.
Turns out that he had been asking other girls for nudes and sending nudes to them. It caused my body so much stress that I literally had to have an emergency C-section due to how much stress my body and baby was under. Him and I aren't together anymore, but we still live in the same house. We actually sleep in separate bedrooms. He is an amazing father, but as a significant other, absolutely not. That man is garbage. Story time about why you should be careful about who you go on vacation with. So a little background information, I was 18 years old and a senior in high school, and I had planned to go on a vacation to Barcelona in Europe with my best friend Kayla and this other girl Megan. Now, we didn't know Megan too well, but we were still friends with her. But I'm not gonna lie, the red flags started before we even left to go to Barcelona. Because as we were booking this trip, Kayla and I wanted to keep a smaller budget because we were going to be leaving for college when we got back. But Megan was not having it at all. She wanted to spend what seemed like every single last penny on this trip. But thankfully, we ended up compromising on a cheap Airbnb in the middle of Budapest. Well, fast forward to whenever we all land in Spain. So we go to the bar and we meet these two British guys. One's name was Will, and he was hanging around with Kayla and I. Then the other one, who we're gonna call Harry, he was chatting it up with Megan. Keep in mind, Megan has a boyfriend. So before we left, the guys asked for our Instagram, and Kayla and I said no, they respected it, but Megan, on the other hand, was giving out her socials. Now, initially, we weren't judging her because because you can be friends with guys and have a boyfriend. Next night, we decided to hit the clubs again because literally every night there was crazy. We meet these guys. They were super cool, and one's name was Rylan and the other one's name was Ellis. Rylan was hitting on Megan, and Ellis was totally into me, which I didn't mind because he was so cute. And while we're all hanging out, Megan has the audacity to turn to me and be like, oh my god, I would totally do the nasty with Ellis if I didn't have a boyfriend. Meanwhile, she knew that I was interested in him. Anyways, so the rest of the night, Ellis and I basically spent it together. We exchanged socials, and Megan was super drunk, so we ended up going home. And then Megan decides to call her man while she's in the bed with Kayla, and we all sleep in one room so we can hear everything that the other person's doing. And then she starts having phone, you know what, with her man while she's in the bed with Kayla. And she's taking nude pics of herself and sending them while she's in the bed. Kayla felt extremely uncomfortable. Anyways, fast forward to the next day. Ellis and I hang out again, and we ended up kissing at the end of the night. And Megan was blackout drunk again, but this time on the way home, not only had she been flirting with so many guys, but she was trying to get with Ellis right in front of me. We ended up going to their apartments afterward, and literally, Megan invites him into bed with her. He didn't get into bed with her, but I was so pissed off. Like, you have a boyfriend, and also you're trying to steal some guy that you know that I like. Kayla and I were furious, so we just decided to go and walk home. Fast forward the next day, Megan wakes up and she can't remember anything that happened the day before. After this, the vibe was just awful, but Kayla and I tried to ignore it, and I'm pretty sure that Megan had no idea that there was a bad vibe. Like, I'm pretty sure that she thought nothing she did was wrong. Anyway, so we go to this beach party thing, and Megan was in charge of booking the beach party, right? Kayla and I gave her money to book tickets that was unlimited drinking. What did she do? She did not book the unlimited drinking package. She booked the regular one. Anyway, so Megan starts flirting with this 30-year-old man, and that's whenever Kayla and I decide, okay, we're gonna go walk around because we're not staying here for this. Like, this is our vacation too. Anyways, we make our way back over to Megan, and she looks pissed. She was so mad that we weren't staying with her while she talked to this old man, and we were like, we never even let you out of our sight. Like, we were barely 10 feet away from you, but we're sorry. She was like, yeah, it's the least that you can do after your behavior. And I'm like, what the fuck? So then all of us are arguing on the beach, and usually I'm the one who is very feisty, but Kayla went off. I have never seen her like this ever in my life, because Megan thought that she could just go off on us and we were gonna stand there and say nothing. So then she orders a cab, and we offer to get in it with her, but she says no, and we stayed and we had a really good night. Because one, this is our vacation too, and we are nobody's babysitters. We tried to make sure that you were having a good time, and we took care of you while you were blackout drunk, and you were not about to treat us like shit. Moral of the story, know who you're going on vacation with before you go on vacation.
My girlfriend abandoned me on my birthday so she could go hang out with her guy best friend. Part 2. After I told her I did not want her best friend coming to my birthday getaway, she threw a tantrum, called him, and complained about me in front of me to him. I was actually so hurt that I grabbed the phone and hung up. She looked at me and told me that I had no right to take the phone from her and blah, blah, blah. That's when I broke down into tears and asked her point blank, do you have a crush on this guy? Immediately, she said no. But then she told me she had a confession. She proceeded to tell me that they both lost each other's V cards to each other, and that's why they were so close. And that because they're trying to work on their relationship, I should let him come to my birthday trip, the one I'm paying for. I asked her if she had feelings for him once again, and she said no. And then I asked her if he has feelings for her. This girl just stayed quiet. Then she had the gall to say, what if he does? Is that really that bad? I actually had to explain to her why that would be a bad situation. Finally, my birthday comes around and she is nowhere to be seen. I was waiting for her in my car to drive to the cabin with her. An hour later, after she's supposed to be there, she sends me a text saying that she's gonna stay with him and that hopefully this distance will make our relationship stronger. Instead, I took my whole family to the cabin and now I'm ignoring her. Now she's been calling me nonstop. I took her not showing up as a breakup, but she wants me back. What should I do?
Storytime, is blood really thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade, and I had just started dating this guy that my friends introduced me to. He was extremely attractive, really smart, and really kind. Literally had all the traits a girl could want in a boyfriend. So him and I are talking for a while, and then we start dating, and we were amazing together. And my sister had just came back home from teaching in Thailand. Surprisingly, her and I got super close because we always used to fight with each other. And now we were inseparable. The only issue was she was 25 years old acting like a child. She always wanted to be at my boyfriend's house with him and his family. Weird, I know. Anyway, so she was always over there with them, and I thought that maybe she was just lonely. Wrong, of course. Now, of course, like any other relationship, mine wasn't perfect, but my boyfriend and I started having more problems than usual when my sister showed up. He was being super weird, and all the signs pointed to him cheating on me. Like for part 2. Part 2, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, my sister started spending more time at my boyfriend's house. I thought that she was lonely, but then my boyfriend started acting weird and all the signs pointing to him cheating on me. But I ignored it because I thought that him and I were in love like in the movies. And also, if I broke up with him, it would be like breaking up with his family because I loved them like my own. Fast forward, his sister ends up getting married and my sister and I were invited to the wedding. Fast forward, everybody gets drunk. We end up spending the night at his cousin's house and something was off with my boyfriend. He wasn't really talking to me. He wouldn't touch me. He pretty much acted like he was done with me. Well, then there's my sister who was flirting and touching him like it was normal. Fast forward a month, I asked my sister if anything happened between them and she goes, I think we slept together. So I confronted him about it and he just laughs and he's like, it wasn't that serious. So I end up breaking up with him and then I start finding unhealthy ways to cope, aka drinking. And eventually I got so lonely to the point where I forgave my sister. And then I started seeing this other guy and he was amazing, like for part 3. Part 3, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, I forgave my sister and then I got a new guy. He was amazing. And then my sister started begging to hang out with us. Now, of course, you would have thought that I learned from the first time, but I did not. I just completely ignored the signs that God gave me that she was a bad person. Okay, I guess not a bad person. She just didn't give a fuck about my feelings. Well, the one weekend his parents went away and they needed him to house sit. So he invited me over to house sit with him. And then guess who tags along? My sister. I mean, I guess I could have told her that she couldn't come, but at the same time, I was trying to be a forgiving person, okay? And I thought that she wouldn't do this shit to me again. Well, I was wrong because on the last night of house sitting, we all decided that we were gonna get drunk. And my sister made sure that I got more effed up than everybody else. I ended up actually getting alcohol poisoning and I almost died. But she didn't care. She was too focused on sleeping with the new guy. The worst part of this is they started dating and my mom was on her side. It's been 3 years and I'm still trying to forgive her and my
Story time about how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 months. He's a personal trainer, so he's really into fitness. When we started dating, I wasn't super fit, but I definitely was toned. Unfortunately, I got the Rona, so I got fired from my job because I couldn't work for 2 weeks. I was super sick and I really became depressed. I basically sat on my couch for those 2 weeks and ate a lot. Before I knew it, I had gained 7 pounds. When I finished my quarantine, I finally was able to see my boyfriend. And when he first came into my house to see me, he looked shocked. He looked me up and down and said, "Did you gain weight?" I said, "Yeah, I probably gained like 7 or 10 pounds. And then he asked me how I could let myself go like that. I told him I was totally by myself, cooped up in my apartment, and I had nothing else to do but eat. And that's when he said, and I quote, "Well, we need to get you back into the gym to get you in shape again, because I don't want a fat girlfriend." I laughed because I thought for sure he's joking, but then he said, "Stop laughing, it's not a joke." My stomach sank and I felt like I was gonna poop my pants. I started to cry and he told me that I shouldn't be a baby, that he's allowed to be honest with me about stuff like this because it has to do with him being attracted to me. So in other words, he wasn't attracted to me anymore. That's when he went into my room, picked out a pair of leggings and a sweatshirt, told me to get dressed, and took me straight to the gym. He made me exercise for an hour and a half. Instead of getting upset about it, I decided to just take it in stride and go with it. I thought maybe I can get in the best shape of my life now that I have a trainer boyfriend. As we were working out, he kept commenting on my thighs. He said that they needed to have a gap and that instead of being muscular, I was super soft. Again, I started to cry. Part 2 is up. Part 3 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. He was trying to force me to get on the scale so that he could weigh me because he wanted to see how much weight I could lose in 1 week. I kept saying no, but then he said fine. Then he handed me a piece of paper and said, "Here's the diet I want you to follow for the next 4 weeks. I grabbed the piece of paper and just put it in my purse. Then he has the audacity to get mad at me for not even looking at the diet. He said that I was disrespectful and that I didn't even look at the diet and that it took him hours to write all of that out. And then he said the thing that crushed my heart. He would be embarrassed to take me around his friends and family with the way that I looked. As soon as he said that, I ran out of the gym and walked home. Of course, he followed me and told me to get in the car, but I refused. I finally got to my house and he called me. I told him I needed some time away from him and that his behavior was extremely toxic, and that if I didn't have a problem with my weight, neither should he. That's when he said that he was accustomed to only being with girls that were super fit and even had abs. He told me that at first he wasn't convinced if he should date me, but I had a really pretty face, and that he was willing to overlook the fact that I wasn't super fit. He's a total narcissist, but I'm still in love with him. I tried to break up with him, but he said no, and he's still insisting that we just go to the gym together at least. I don't even know how to respond to him. What should I say? Part 2 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After he told me that I was soft at the gym, I started to cry again. I told him that I needed to be more sensitive towards my feelings and that I didn't want to be in a relationship if he was going to be like this toward me. That's when he said that he didn't want to be in a relationship with me because I had gained weight and that's not what he had signed up for. That's when he told me I needed to look around and see all the fit women in the gym and that he could have any of those girls. I was in utter shock. I just couldn't believe that he was talking to me like that, and I had never seen that side of him before. The more I cried, the angrier he got, but finally he said, okay, I'm sorry. Let's just do 20 minutes on the Stairmaster. That's when I told him I didn't want to work out anymore. Mind you, he had already had me at the gym for an hour and a half. That's when he said, fine, I'll take you home, but I'm coming back to the gym. The whole way home, he stayed quiet and gave me the cold shoulder while I cried. He pulled up to my house and I got out of the car and he literally sped away as fast as he could. He proceeded to give me the cold shoulder for the next 2 days. I finally broke and texted him telling him we needed to speak. That's when he said we could talk at the gym. I agreed and he went to pick me up. But the first thing he wanted to do at the gym was put me on a scale and weigh me. I told him absolutely not. Part 3 is up.
Story time. I'm in a long distance relationship and I don't know if I should break up with this boy or not. So a little background information. Him and I were best friends for almost a month before we started dating. And literally as soon as we started dating, he started asking me for nudes. And I would be like, no, not tonight, I'm tired. And then he would keep asking me why. And then he would start to make me feel guilty about not wanting to send him nudes. Eventually he would just say, it's fine, I'll just wait until we can do physical things together. And he still has, quote, his hoes on Snapchat. And he still has all of their nudes and everything. And literally the day before we started dating, he told me that he liked this one girl. And he'll always hang up the phone to talk to her instead of me. And then when I bring it up, he tries to say that he's... So obviously I try and bring this up to him. And he tries to make me feel bad by saying that he thinks about unaliving himself. He also has a few other red flags, like for part 2. Story time. I'm in a long distance relationship with this boy and I don't know if I should break up with him or not. So like I said, he says he always thinks about unaliving himself, so obviously I feel bad for him and I just love him so much that I can't let him go, and he has a bunch of other red flags. Like he'll tell people he's 13 and other people he's 14, and you know, he apparently didn't know his birthday. Well, fast forward, he's been texting me more, and when I told him I loved him, he left me on open, which he never does. He always says it back to me. We still haven't really been talking on the phone, but I did send him pictures. Not fully nude, but both times I sent those, he literally called me right after. But other than that, he will never call me.
Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 5 years. Granted, we did break up throughout those 5 years. With all the breakups, we've actually been together for about 3 years. I've never considered myself an obsessive person, but when it comes to him, something just takes over me. Here's some of the reasons why we broke up. At first, he didn't want to be in a relationship even though I begged him, which I know was so dumb of me. So he eventually broke up with me and told me that he didn't want anything serious. But he kept on calling me every single week because he wanted the dirty. Instead, I started going out on other dates and I would flaunt it all over my social media. And this worked. It made him super jealous and he came right back to me. Called me up one day and told me that he wanted me back. The second time we broke up, I caught him talking to some girls on Facebook. When I confronted him, he broke up with me. Told me I was too nosy and that he needed to live his life as a single man. We finally got back together. I told him that it was for marriage. He said yes, that he would eventually ask me to marry him. A few months ago, he started acting really cold towards me. He would barely call me, and when we were together, he would never touch me. That's when I started digging in his phone and I found that he was talking to some girls on Instagram. But I knew that if I confronted him, I would risk him breaking up with me again. So I did the next logical thing. I waited until I saw him again and I told him that I was pregnant. I even started to cry to make him feel like I was happy. His face turned completely white and he asked me if I was sure. I said, yes, aren't you happy, baby? Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just so that I could keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. That's when he started to cry. Remember, I don't even have a pregnancy test to show or anything, but surprisingly, he didn't ask for proof of my pregnancy. He just kept crying on the couch. I asked him if he was happy, but clearly he was not. But he lied and said, yeah, of course I'm happy. Seeing how vulnerable he was, I took advantage of the situation and I brought up marriage. I told him we should get engaged soon so that we could tell his family. Then he said, are you sure you want to get married? And I said, of course, we're gonna have a baby. Then he sat there for a minute and thought about it. Finally, he got down on one knee and said, do you want to marry me? I said, yes! And this time I cried for real. All my dreams were coming true. After that, things started moving really fast. We invited both our families to my apartment and we hosted a dinner. We broke the news to them that I was pregnant. Again, nobody asked for proof of the pregnancy though. Our families were so happy and excited. That very same night, he gave me a beautiful engagement ring. His mom even started planning the baby shower. Let me remind you, I'm actually not pregnant. So I had to come up with a plan. You'll never guess what I did. Part 3 is up. Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent me on Instagram. His mom started planning the baby shower and there was no turning back. Even my mom got involved in the planning of the baby shower. So like I said, I'm really not pregnant at this point. So I started trying to get pregnant, but my damn boyfriend just wouldn't touch me. I decided to check his phone again and saw that he was still talking to some girls on Instagram. So I decided to confront him at this point. I mean, we are engaged and I'm supposedly pregnant with his baby. I confronted him and he just got angry at me. He said that if he was gonna marry me and have a baby with me, he would need to talk to other girls and that was not a negotiation for him. Then he confessed that he was seeing 2 other girls on the side and that there was no way he was gonna stop seeing them and that I couldn't do anything about it. But his confession actually made me fall out of love with him. Now I'm planning to break up with him. But what do I do about the fake pregnancy? I do want to make him pay for what he said to me, but I don't want to hurt our families either. Should I just come clean? What should I do?
Story time about why my best friend cut me off. So a little background information, I was 24 and I had a full-time job as a nurse, and I had been best friends with this girl since we were in 7th grade. As soon as she turned 21, she got married, had a kid, and just like any young tragic love story, her boyfriend, who was way older than her, left her for some girl who just turned 18. So I ended up letting her move in with me. She had too much pride to go back to her mom's house. I ended up kicking her out of my house though, because she would have random guys over 24/7 and she would smoke you know what in my house. So I had the cops called on me 24/7 because my neighbors could smell it. So fast forward to now, she's living with her mom. Her and I got over that fight and she decided that she wanted to go to college. I was so proud of her, but she asked me if I could watch her kid when she had to go into school because she was doing mostly online. So of course I said yes, I wanted her to succeed. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why my best friend cut me off. So like I said, she finally decided to go to college. Me being super happy for her, I would watch her kid whenever she would have to go into school. Well, the one night I'm making dinner and her kid's in the living room, I'm in the kitchen, and I go into the living room to tell him that dinner is ready, and I see my dog backed up into a corner and him with a fire poker literally poking my dog. I wouldn't even call it poking, he was pretty much trying to stab my dog. My dog has its ears back, it's shaking with anxiety. So I go over and I rip it out of his hands and I smack his fingers. And I tell him, we do not do that to the dog. Like, what is wrong with you? So my friend comes, picks him up. A few days later, she comes to drop him off again. And she says, hey, can I talk to you? I already knew what it was about, so I was expecting this. She was like, Gavin told me that you hit him last time he was here. And I was like, yeah, he pretty much was stabbing my dog. And then she's like, oh, well, you know, he doesn't mean any harm. He plays with the dogs like that at home. Like, okay, sis, this.
I hooked up with my stepbrother and now he's blackmailing me. What should I do? Disclaimers and all my Storytime was sending me on Instagram. Yes, I admit it. I'm an absolutely vile human being for hooking up with my stepbrother. Okay, but he's really, really hot. We're both 18, but this all went down when we were 17. A little backstory. My parents got divorced 5 years ago and this affected me severely. I was so angry at them for separating us. I began to have a lot of anxiety about it. My dad was the one to move out of the house. So my mom and I tried to make the best of it. Not 2 months after their divorce was finalized, my mom met another guy, and he was the perfect man. He was really good looking and the CEO of a huge company. My mom's 45 and he's actually 10 years older than her. Being the angry teen that I was, I didn't want to accept it. She invited him over so that we could meet, but I was pretty much an asshole the entire time. To be honest, after the dinner, I actually ended up liking him. He was really funny, he made my mom laugh, and he understood my humor. All of this, of course, made my mom really happy. A few days later, this man calls me and tells me that he wants to propose to my mom. So he essentially wanted to get my permission first. So I said yes. That's when he moved in with his son. Part 2 is up. I hooked up with my stepbrother and now he's blackmailing me. That's when my mom's new fiance and his son were moving into our house. I decided that I would try to make the best of it. I was always so angry that I just needed to give myself a break. And the first time that I met him was when he moved in. As soon as he came in through the door, I was literally speechless. He was so hot. Like the best looking guy that I had ever seen in my life. I'm sorry you guys, I have hiccups right now. And we couldn't stop looking at each other. We all sat down to have lunch and he and I just stared at each other the entire time. That's when my stepdad told us that after the wedding, we were all moving to a new house. Like I said, he has a lot of money. And I was actually really excited about this. A new house meant a new start. But guess what? My stepbrother started coming to the same school that I did. So we would basically go to school together every single day. That's when we both found out that we had so much in common. While we drove to school, he would always turn to look at me. And I would ask what's up and he would say nothing. But one night he came into my room and he kissed me. Part 3 is up. So there I am making out with my stepbrother in my own bed. Mind you, I was asleep when he came in. As soon as I realized he was kissing me, I got out of bed. That's when he told me that he knew that we were both attracted to each other and that we should just do it. I stayed quiet and I didn't know how to respond. I felt super shy and embarrassed. Then he grabbed me and kissed me again. I told him to leave my room and he did. But after that, the sexual tension was real. I always caught him staring at me. Even at school, he would stare at me. And he would go out of his way to bump into me. One day we were driving home and he pulls over on a deserted road. He started kissing me and I couldn't resist. We ended up making out in his car for like an hour. After that, he told me that he wanted me to be his girlfriend but in secret. And that he didn't want our parents to find out. But I said no because it's wrong. We live in the same house and our parents are married to each other. Of course he got angry. Now he just grabs me and kisses me whenever he wants. And he says that I am his girlfriend even if I don't want to. And he told me that if I don't accept, he'll tell his dad about us. I really like him, but I think it's wrong. What should I do?
Story time about how I tried to stick up for this kid on the bus, but it got me suspended. So a little background information, I was 12 and in 7th grade. So it was a Wednesday, and when school ended, I got on the afternoon bus. And there was this boy named Josh that I was friends with. So I went and I sat next to him on the bus. After like 5 minutes of us waiting for the bus driver to get back on the bus, this boy named Kai that everybody loves for some reason comes over and rips me out of the seat. After that, he sits down next to Josh and starts punching him and screaming at him. So I grab this kid by his book bag, rip him out of the seat, and I sit next to Josh. I put my headphones in, plug in my phone, and this kid grabs the phone, throws it at the front of the bus. And there weren't any adults on the bus at this time because our bus driver was using the bathroom. And I didn't go up and get my phone because I knew that if I moved, this kid was probably going to hurt Josh again. So then this kid starts trying to punch me. So I punch him in the stomach. An adult comes on the bus, finally, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got suspended for trying to stick up for some kid on the bus. So like I said, this kid is starting to try to punch me. So I punch him in the stomach. Finally, an adult gets on the bus. She yells at us to all sit down. And by the way, all the little fucking 12-year-olds had their phones out recording what was happening. So they look at the cameras, they were interviewing some of the kids, and Josh's sister comes up to me, and I was like, oh, shit. Hopefully she's not going to yell at me. I don't know why she would, but still. She was like, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for sticking up for my brother. So then after a little bit, I hear my name get called on the speaker. Kai, Josh, and I were all called down to the office. All of our parents were there. Kai got a 3-day suspension and I got a 3-week suspension. Even though I literally had scratches all over my freaking arms and Kai didn't even have a bruise on him. Well, my mom, being the boss-ass bitch that she is, she told the school that if they went through with my suspension, she would call the news and tell them that my school was letting kids get away with bullying.
Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? My boyfriend and I started dating 2 years ago. At the beginning of our relationship, I was weighing 130 pounds. So back then, he never had a problem with my weight. In fact, he used to praise me and tell me that he loved my body. He always would tell me that my curves were sexy, and I would sometimes tell him that I wanted to lose weight, but he would always say no. In fact, a few months after we started dating, I went on a diet. I lost about 5 pounds in 2 weeks, and he told me that I needed to stop. He told me he liked my womanly body. So I stopped dieting. At first, I was happy that he loved my body so much, but at the same time, I didn't feel healthy, which is why I started the diet in the first place. After I stopped the diet, I still kept on eating healthy, with the exception that every now and then we would have pizza or fast food. But I still tried to keep it to a minimum. So my boyfriend is actually in the Marines, and he had to go away for a few months. This sent me into a depression because I missed him so much. And because of that, I started eating a lot. I would ask my mom to cook me my favorite meals, and I would basically just eat all day. At the time, I also didn't have a job, so that was making me depressed as well. So I ended up gaining 40 pounds. Part 2 is up. Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? After he told me I looked disgusting, I instantly broke out into tears. That's when he said, "What did you expect?" Then he said, "I've been away for months. The last thing I want to come home to is a huge gut." But then I started crying more and he kind of softened up. He said that we could work out together and that he could help me lose the weight. He then pulls up his phone and shows me a picture of what he thinks I should look like. It was basically some random Instagram model that he followed, who was actually way skinnier than I was when he first met me. For the next week, he barely touched me, and he would make little snide remarks every time he saw me eating. For example, one night we decided to watch a movie at my place. I asked him if he wanted any snacks, and he said no. Then I told him I was probably gonna make some popcorn and if he wanted any. That's when he said I needed to watch what I was eating, especially at night, and that the last thing I needed was snacks during a movie. This obviously hurt my feelings. And of course, I started dieting again. But this time I was even more strict about it. I basically cut out every single thing that I like to eat, and I was only eating lean meats and salad, but very little portions. One night he invited his friends to come over to watch a football game. Instead of me having to cook, I offered to order them pizza and they said yes. When the pizzas finally arrived, my boyfriend said in front of everybody, "You don't get to eat any pizza because you still need to lose weight." I was so horrified, mortified, I wanted to literally crawl under a rock and die. His friends started laughing because they actually thought it was a joke. Then he says, "No, you guys, I'm serious. She's so fat." I couldn't believe my boyfriend was putting me down like that in front of his friends. I gave him the silent treatment, but he really didn't care. After a full month, I started finally losing weight. It's been 3 months now, and I'm weighing 120 pounds. Now he's all over me and constantly tells me that I look beautiful. But I'm never gonna forget how he treated me when I was heavier. I know that I should break up with him because of how he treated me, but I really do love him. And he's back to normal now. He loves me and touches me all the time. What should I do? Should I break up with my boyfriend for fat shaming me? While he was in the Marines, I ended up gaining 40 pounds. I was super depressed and I didn't have a job and I missed him so much. One day he calls me and tells me that he's going to be home in 2 weeks. And that's when I knew I needed to start dieting again. But then part of me remembered that my boyfriend liked me when I was thicker and curvier. So what I did was I cut down on all the fried foods, but I still kept eating a lot during the day, which basically helped me maintain the weight instead of just losing weight. In preparation for his coming home, I went to get my hair done, my nails done. I even got a facial and I went to get wax down there, which of course is super painful. I even went to pick up some lingerie because nothing fit me at the time. I also cleaned my entire apartment and cooked him a really nice meal. To tell you, I even called his mother to ask her for the recipes. I was so excited to see him. He finally shows up to my house and I have everything ready. But as soon as he sees me, he asks me what happened. I said, "What do you mean?" Then all he said was, "You're fat." At first I laughed because I thought he was joking. Then he says, "What's so funny?" It's like he was instantly angry. I told him I gained some weight and that I didn't bother losing it because he liked me curvy. That's when he said, "Yeah, I like you curvy, not fat." Then he told me I looked disgusting. Part 2 is up.
Story time about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade, and there was this boy that I really liked who lived like 10 minutes away from me. So the one night he asked me if I wanted to hang out, and my mom was strict about me not hanging out with people after 7 o'clock at night, especially a boy. I wasn't even allowed to hang out with boys. And my grandma, my mom, and my brother and I all lived together, and we all had our own rooms. Mine was on the first floor of the house, so I snuck out the window and I went and hung out with him. So I snuck out at around 3 and came back at around 4 a.m. And my grandma comes into my room to wake me up for school. And I guess that I had been laying on my side and my hair was like pulled up, because literally all I remember waking up to is her smacking me up out of my sleep and screaming at me because there was a hickey on my neck. She's like, "I'm telling your mom whenever she gets home, your window's gonna be screwed shut." And I keep telling her it's not a hickey, so she calls my brother over. And he's like, "Yeah, that's definitely a hickey," because he likes to kiss her ass. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, she's like, "I'm telling your mom," and I keep telling her that it's not a hickey. And thankfully, my mom already went to work. She had work at 6 a.m. So I got on the bus, I go to school, and I'm talking to my friend and telling her about how I'm literally going to be crucified whenever I get home. And she told me about how her older sister was in like the same situation that I'm in now. So she texted her older sister asking what she did because she never got caught. And I was like, okay, well, if she used makeup, my mom's going to find out because she's not dumb. Well, apparently her older sister burnt herself with a curling iron. Yes, literally burnt herself, but she ended up getting away with it. So fast forward, I get home at around 3 o'clock and I sneak in through the back door so that way my grandma won't see that I came in the house, because she literally would have made me sit in the living room until my mom got home. So I go upstairs and I burn myself with a curling iron, which is not fun. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my grandma almost got me grounded. So like I said, I snuck in through the back door so that way my grandma wouldn't see me, because if she saw me, she would have made me wait in the living room with her until my mom got home. So, you know, burnt myself with the curling iron and my mom gets home. And since I'm on the first floor, I can literally hear my grandma talking to my mom and my brother, of course. My grandma's like, "Yeah, she has hickeys all over her neck," which is literally an exaggeration because there was one small one. So my mom calls me out to the living room. I go out and she's like, "All right, show it to me." And I'm like, "Show you what?" She's like, "Don't play stupid. Your grandma already told me the whole situation." And I was like, "Mom, I literally burnt myself with a curling iron." And my grandma's like screaming and freaking out because I'm lying. She's like, "You better tell your mother the truth right now, da 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 da." So I show the burn to my mom. She looks at my grandma and she's like, "So you're gonna tell me that's not a burn on her neck?" And she was like, "That's not how it looked this morning, blah, blah, blah." So I got away with it, but now my grandma literally stalks me to see if I'm doing anything wrong so she can tell my mom. Is a $40 foundation better than a $9 foundation? The two foundations that we have going up against each other are the She Glam Complexion Pro and the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. This at least looks like it's $30. So on this side, I'm going to do the She Glam foundation, and on the other side, I'm going to do the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. First things first, both of these foundations claim to have a matte finish that lasts all day, and it is supposed to feel like nothing is on your face. Also, both of these are supposed to be full coverage, and that's good to put to the test today because I do have a few blemishes. I am in literal shock right now. This is a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. $9, $40, no beauty filter. They both look and feel the exact same way. Run. Do not walk, run. And everybody can run because there are 30 shades. Like, I'm sorry, you will never catch me spending $40 on a foundation ever again.
My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my Storytime, send me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous. But he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house. Which, yes, is totally amazing. But that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins. And we're really, really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers are not my Storytime, it's gonna be on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account, so it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it. But I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister, and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, "Isn't this better than cheating on you?" I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers are not my Storytime, it's gonna be on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone and that he was receiving my messages because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. Haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do?
Storytime about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was during the summertime, and I was super excited because I had just got my license, but my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their BITCH. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok, and she didn't have the right seasonings for it, so who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target. And when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in, and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around, and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone. And this woman came up to me. She was like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is." So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, "Yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her?" And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck, but I said, "Oh." Part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter, and I was like, "I'm going to go tell a Target employee." And she was like, "No, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place." And she was like, "Will you help me check the parking lot because I don't know if she left?" She was like, "I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, "Okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car?" And she was like, "No, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around?" And I said, "Yeah," because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, "I think someone's under my car." And she was like, "What? No, it's probably just the shadow." And I'm like, "No, there's someone under my car." So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me.
My husband won't stop texting his coworker and doesn't even bother hiding it from me anymore. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I said I mean on Instagram. My husband got a new job about a year ago. He finally started earning a lot of money and he really loves his job. I'm a substitute teacher, so at the time we were really broke. We were desperate for one of us to get a better job. A few weeks after he started his new job, his boss threw a party so that we could all get to know each other. And this is when I met Karen. Karen right away came up to me and tried to make me feel like she was my best friend. She started talking to me about really personal stuff right away. In other words, she was trying to let me know that I could trust her because she was telling me her deepest, darkest secrets. But I don't fall for that kind of shit easily. As the barbecue went on, I kept noticing that she would talk to my husband a lot. And my husband would reciprocate. If he was at the bar, she was at the bar. If she was trying to grab food, he was trying to grab food. I called my husband out on it and he told me that they were really close friends at work. And that she was basically his work wife. I told him he needed to stop that real quick. Otherwise, I would move in with my parents. For the rest of the barbecue, he behaved like a little lamb. Only 2 weeks later, I find messages between them. Part 2 is up. And won't stop texting his coworker and doesn't even bother hiding it from me anymore. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's not me on Instagram. 2 weeks later, I find messages from Karen on his phone. At that point, I had completely forgotten about Karen. My husband and I try to do date nights every single week. On this one occasion, we sit down at a restaurant and his phone kept going off, pinging almost every single minute. He wouldn't turn off the sound. 7th time it rang, I decided to pick up the phone only to silence it. I mean, at this point, I have no reason to not trust him. But when I take a quick glance at the messages, it said work wife. My blood instantly began to boil. That's when he tried to take the phone from me, but I pulled it back. Open the messages and see that they were having a conversation about me and him going to dinner. And how jealous she was that she couldn't come with him. Mind you, we're sitting in the middle of a restaurant. That's when my husband says, "Go ahead and read it. I don't give a shit." I look at him and I couldn't recognize him. Like, I literally could not recognize his face. He looked like a different man. He was no longer the considerate, loving husband. He was now just some other guy texting another girl. As I read through the messages, the tears started flowing down my face. And I made a scene. I told him he needed to stop texting her. Then he says, "No, I like her. Why would I stop?" Part 2 is up. My husband won't stop texting his coworker and doesn't even bother to hide it from me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when he told me that he liked her and why would he stop texting her. I actually had to sit there at the restaurant and explain to my 30-year-old husband why it was inappropriate for him to be texting his work wife. He said they were doing nothing wrong by texting each other. That's when I told him that if he didn't stop texting her, that he could forget about me. He said that there was nothing wrong with him having friends. I told him that friends shouldn't tell each other that they're jealous if they're going out with their wife. And he explained that it was just banter. She loves playing at being jealous. Ew! Then he said this: would you rather me hide the messages from you? My stomach sank. This man clearly does not understand that what he's doing is wrong. We've never had a problem like this before. We've been married 3 years and this has never been a thing. I got up from the restaurant and took an Uber home. Do you think he chased me? No. It wouldn't be another 4 hours until he got home. I asked him where he'd been and he told me that he was just chilling at the restaurant. For 4 hours? I asked him once again if he would stop texting her and he said no. That again, they were not doing anything wrong. But their messages were like boyfriend and girlfriend messages. Things like, what do you want for lunch this week? I miss you. I'm jealous that you're going to dinner with your wife. After he said no, I packed my overnight bag and I went to his parents' house. My parents live 2 hours from me. I told his parents everything and they went over to talk to him right away. And they were pissed. His dad even threatened him to take him out of his will. His parents had my back and told me that I could stay with them. But instead, I went home to my parents. I also just found out that Karen has a boyfriend. Should I tell her man? Or should I just divorce my husband and forget the whole thing? Whatevs.
Story time. My boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So a little background information, I was 17 and a junior in high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for a year. But just a little backstory about when we got together. So there were definitely some red flags that I missed, okay? One of them being that he had a girl best friend. And I don't care what y'all have to say if that makes me insecure or what, but coming from someone who has been the girl best friend, I knew this was not good at all. Especially whenever we first started dating and she was still being super friendly with him, meaning she would hold his hand, she would hang on him 24/7. And when I told him I was super uncomfortable with that and I felt like there needed to be some boundaries, he was like, yeah, I told you what it was whenever we got together. So if you don't like that, then just break up with me. Looking back on it now, that was also a red flag because I feel like he was telling me to break up with him so that way he didn't have to break up with me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So like I said, she would still hang all over him and he pretty much told me, if you don't like that, then you can leave. Obviously, I did not want to leave because I liked him and he was my boyfriend. So I just kept putting up with it and eventually, we got 6 months into our relationship. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I have a little bit more authority, to be like, hey, I don't like the way that she acts around you. You guys can't hang out like that anymore. And they would hang out alone together. He would take her to dinner. I literally tried telling him that the stuff that they do together is relationship stuff. And he was like, that's not true at all because we did all of this stuff before you and I even got together. So anyways, like I said, 6 months in, I'm like, hey, I don't like the way that you guys are hanging around each other. Once again, he gives me the same excuse. So he pretty much said that he didn't care. And the one night him and I were supposed to hang out, but he canceled on me last minute. And her and I didn't get along and she never Snapchatted me before, but then I get a Snapchat of her and him making out at his house. Part 3 about why I will never ever ever babysit ever again. So like I said, I picked up the stack of towels and a camera that was recording fell out of it. And while I was home later that night, I was waiting for my mom to get home when I got a call from Will. And if you don't remember who that is, that's Autumn's dad. And of course I wasn't going to answer the phone because I was super weirded out and low-key scared. But then he left a voicemail. And he was like, hey, so I know you have the camera. And this is kind of awkward, but I'm gonna need it back. I can pay you whatever you want, and I would prefer that we don't tell anybody about this. Sometimes I'm just really amazed at how stupid people are because as soon as my mom got home, I showed her the camera and I let her listen to the voicemail. So my mom called over Autumn's mom. So they called the police, and Autumn's mom kept trying to call Will, but his phone was going straight to voicemail. And she was like, yeah, he begged me not to come over here whenever you called. It's been a week since this happened, and Autumn's dad is currently running from the cops.
Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. I'm definitely toxic and vindictive. So when my boyfriend broke up with me, I knew what I had to do. He and I dated for 9 months. And you could say that I was a little overbearing. If you guys saw what this man looked like, maybe you'd understand. He's the type of guy that all the girls want to get with. Not only is he super handsome, but he's also very successful. And he's a great guy. Comes from a great family and he's really close to them. I, on the other hand, grew up in the foster system, so having a family was always my biggest dream. And when I met his family, they took me in right away. His mom and I essentially became best friends. His dad would take me out to dinners and lunch, and they basically adopted me as their daughter. Here's when things started going wrong. I was extremely jealous and I basically didn't let him do anything. Every time he wanted to go out with his friends, I would start a fight. Anytime he would bring up a female friend from the past, I would simply threaten to break up with him. Trust me, I recognized that what I was doing was wrong, but part of me just couldn't control myself. I was willing to do anything to make him stay with me. Eventually, he got really sick of me, started mentioning that he wanted to take a break. So that's when I told him that I was pregnant. Was I pregnant? Absolutely not. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. The first time he threatened to break up with me, I told him that I was pregnant. It was obviously a lie and he knew it, so he basically still walked out on me. So in order to get his attention again, I decided to go to his family and tell them that I was pregnant. And they all believed me. His mom and dad even invited me to go live with them during the pregnancy. At first I said yes, but then I was like, hold on a second. How am I gonna fake a pregnancy? So to get myself out of that, I told him that I thought I was pregnant, but I actually wasn't. Yep, I'm starting my makeup all over again at this point. I had way too many layers on. During the time we were on a break, I basically followed him around everywhere just to make sure that he wasn't hooking up with any girls. Finally, 2 weeks later, he called me and told me that he missed me. We got back together, but the same thing happened. I was still jealous and controlling, but this time he was becoming more and more jealous. So much so that he started trying to control the way that I was dressing. Around this time, we started having huge fights. He would punch the wall right by my head. I would throw things at him, even threw a knife at him once. But part of me liked that he was so jealous and toxic. He was obsessed with me. And he broke up with me again, and 2 months later, he was engaged. And guess what? His family invited me to their engagement party. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I crashed my ex's wedding and managed to break them up a month later. That's when I get the invitation for his engagement party. At this point, it seems that my ex's parents thought we separated on good terms. So of course, I showed up to that engagement party. As soon as my ex saw me, he came straight to me and told me to leave. And I told him that I was welcome because his parents had invited me. He gave me a whole speech about how we were over and I needed to accept it. But of course, not one single part of me was willing to accept that. Then he called me an Uber, so I actually did end up leaving. When the wedding comes around, I was the first guest to show up. As soon as his parents saw me, they welcomed me. So I went and sat down at the parents' table. When my ex came out, he nearly fell over. Mind you, this is the first time I'm meeting his wife. I went up to her and told her that I was an ex of his. That's when she looked at me and said, when did you guys date? I said we dated for 9 months. And then she says that they had been dating at the same time. So then a whole bunch of drama goes down. She goes to him and starts slapping him. He starts to cry. And then his parents ask me to leave. So I did. The next month, I followed her everywhere. Finally told me to leave her alone and that they had already gotten a divorce. So my plan worked. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get back with my ex. What should I do?
Story time about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So a little background information. I was 14 years old and had just started my freshman year of high school. And my brother and his girlfriend were both seniors. And we're going to call his girlfriend Riley. Now, Riley and my brother started dating in the middle of the summer. And you would think since they just started dating and basically just met each other that I wouldn't know her that well. But literally 2 days after they started dating, she started spending every single day at my house. I'm being serious, like she had a whole duffel bag that had basically her closet in it. But that wasn't the problem. So in the summertime, my parents would plan a lot of family activities. And since they were called family activities, his girlfriend wasn't allowed to go. I mean, I think she would have been allowed to go, but she was also really disrespectful to my mom. So after one of our family days, my parents asked my brother if Riley would be joining us for dinner. And he just ignored them and went up to his room. And my room's right next to his, so I could hear everything. And Riley called him like for part 2. Part 2 about why I hate my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, my room was right next to my brother, so I could literally hear everything. And I guess Riley called him and she was complaining about me. She was like, she's the reason why your mom doesn't like me. I feel like she's jealous of me. She doesn't want us to be together. Which was really weird because I didn't give a fuck about what my brother did. So fast forward, school finally starts. And Riley lived about 20 minutes away from us. So my brother told her that he couldn't go and pick her up for school every day. But obviously I would ride to school with him because we lived together. Anyways, eventually she had a problem with that too. So my brother and I had to start leaving 30 minutes early to get to school so we could pick her up. So the first time that we pick her up, we pull up to her house. And obviously I'm in the front seat and she's just standing there. So my brother rolls down the window and he's like, get in the fucking car, we're gonna be late. And then she literally has the audacity to start arguing with my brother in front of me about why she should get the front seat instead of me. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I hated my brother's girlfriend. So like I said, once she got in, she started screaming about how she should get the front seat instead of me. So I turn around and I'm like, last time I checked, you've only been here for 2 months. Stay in your fucking lane. And then she starts crying because she's like, oh my god, your sister's so mean to me. Like, I just feel like I should have more respect as his girlfriend. So fast forward to the weekend, my mom said that she needs to have a talk with me. And she's like, honey, I know you may not like your brother's girlfriend, but you have to stop being mean to her. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've only had one conversation with her in the last week, and that was to tell her to stay in her fucking lane. And then I told her about everything going on. So she calls my brother down to ask him if it's true. And my brother was pretty pissed off at me, but he wouldn't lie. So my mom said that she was not allowed over the house anymore, and that he wasn't allowed to go pick her up from school until I got my license. So that just caused more problems between her and my brother, so he broke up with her. And then she started spreading rumors that she broke up with him because there was something weird going on between him and I.
The asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother. A month ago, I borrowed my mom's phone and she had no idea, but I looked at all of her apps and found that she was cheating with multiple men. I'm 26 years old and my parents have now been married for 30 years. I actually got separated when I graduated from high school, but then they got back together a few years later. My mom has always been the one that wants to separate my dad, but he keeps wanting to get back together with her. My dad is actually in love with this woman. He adores her. He does everything for her. He's super affectionate with her, loves to take her out on dates, gives her so much of his time, and she still doesn't appreciate it. I've always been closer to my dad than my mom. My mom's always trying to find an excuse to go party with her friends, but now I know why. Like I said, I ended up borrowing her phone and she probably didn't expect me to go snooping. And honestly, it wasn't even my intention. I'm scrolling on her phone and I see the app Tinder. I nearly fell out of my seat. So I quickly scrolled through everything and started taking pictures. My mom was sending nudes to random men. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? That's when I saw that she was sending nudes to men on different apps. Not only was she on Tinder, she was also on Bumble and an app for older people. Mind you, my father is still in love with this woman. I managed to take pictures of everything on the apps. Here's the worst part. Start going through her messages and that's when I found that she has a boyfriend. At that point, I didn't know how long they'd been together. Now I know that she's been with him for 6 months. So every single time she goes on her weekend trips with her friends, she's actually with her boyfriend. And get this, she uses my dad's money to pay for everything. An entire week passed before I confronted her. First, I didn't know how to confront her, but I had to just do it. Every time I saw my dad, I would start to cry and he was worried about me. I didn't have the heart to tell my dad until I confronted my mom. I went up to her and I showed her all the receipts I had. So she got pissed at me for looking through her phone. By the way, at this point, I'm still living with my parents. That's when she threatened to kick me out of the house if I told my dad anything. My own mother threatening me. Then she tried to smack me across the face, so I smacked her. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? After she slapped me, I slapped her back. And I slapped her so hard she actually fell on the floor. I instantly felt bad and tried to apologize. That's when she started to cry and I started to cry. I asked her to just be honest with me and tell me the truth. She told me that she wasn't in love with my dad anymore, but that she felt bad for him because he was still in love with her. And that she'd been dating this new guy for 6 months. She even confessed that she was addicted to going on dating apps and flirting with men. That's when I told her she needed to tell my dad. That she needed to stop using his money to take her boyfriend out. Then another confession. She had spent over $25,000 on hotels that she would book for her and her new boyfriend. And apparently this guy was broke. He couldn't pay for himself. She tried to negotiate with me. If I don't tell my dad, she'd break up with her boyfriend and stop using the apps. I mean, she's my mother and I don't want to cause her pain, but it's my dad. I ended up telling her that I wouldn't tell my dad. But 2 nights ago, my dad went on a work trip. My mom is so stupid she actually snuck in her boyfriend through her window. I heard them doing the dirty all night. And now she's begging me again not to tell my dad. I'm planning on telling my dad tonight. I'll have to keep you guys updated. Give me advice.